You know the math. You've probably read the articles. You've probably even told yourself, I need to charge more. And then you send out another bid that's too low again. Why? It's not because you're bad at math. It's not because you don't know your cost. It's because your brain is working against you and you don't even realize it. Today, I'm going to show you the 5 psychological traps that cause contractors to systematically underprice their work. These aren't opinions, they're backed by decades of behavioral research, and once you see them, maybe you'll never estimate the same way again. So, I want to start with one experiment that was done in 1974. Psychologist Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky spun a rigged wheel of fortune in front of research subjects. The wheel was fixed to land on either the numbers 10 or 65. They had the subjects split into two groups. After spinning, they asked subjects to estimate what percentage of African nations were part of the United Nations. Seems completely unrelated. But here's what actually happened. The group of people who saw the wheel land on 10 estimated only 25% of nations on average. People who saw 65 estimated 45% of nations were part of the UN. What ended up being a random, meaningless number shifted their answers by 20 percentage points. That's called anchoring, and it's possibly controlling your pricing every single day. Here's some ways that it can show up. Client calls and says, we're looking to remodel the kitchen. Our budget is around $30,000. What just happened? Your brain grabbed that 30,000 and made it the reference point for everything. You're no longer asking what should this job cost? You're asking how can I make this work for $30,000? You start trimming scope in your head. You consider cheaper materials. You shave a day off your labor estimate. And you convince yourself your usual profit margin is too high for this one. That $30,000 wasn't necessarily based on anything real. The client might have pulled it from a blog post or their cousin's kitchen remodeled that was done 6 or 7 years ago. And that scope of work was completely different from what this would be. But now it's controlling your estimate. The same thing can happen with competitor pricing. You hear through the grapevine that Joe bid an $18,000 for a deck, and you were thinking, I was going to bid $22,000. Maybe that's too high. You just let someone else's potentially unprofitable bid drag yours down. You don't know their cost, you don't know their overhead, and the worst part is that researchers studied some experienced real estate agents. They gave them identical houses to appraise, but with different listing prices. The result? The experienced agents were just as influenced by the listing price as complete amateurs. Only 19% of the experts admitted the listing price affected them. They were anchored, they just didn't know it. Here's one potential fix that you can use. Before you talk to the client, before you hear too many numbers from them, try to get as much info as you can on the job, where you can put some figures together and calculate what the job should cost based on your actual costs and required margin. Write that number down. That's your anchor point. Don't be dragged off course by theirs. The second trap, and this one can be sneaky. Imagine I flip you a coin. Heads, you win $100. Tails, you lose 100. Would you take it? Most people say no, even though it's mathematically fair, but the pain of losing 100 feels almost twice as bad as the pleasure of winning 100. Psychologists call this loss aversion. We feel losses roughly twice as intensely as equivalent gains. Now apply this to your own bidding. You're deciding between two pricing strategies. Bid A, you have a higher price, maybe a 30% chance of winning. Bid B is a lower price and maybe a 60% chance of winning. Your gut says to go with bid B. Higher chance of winning. You don't want to lose the job because you need the work, etc., etc. But let's do the real math. Bid A, that has a 30% chance of winning. You estimate you're going to have $8,000 of profit. Multiply them together equals 2,400 in expected value. Bid B, a 60% chance to win it. You estimate you're going to have $2,000 in profit. Multiply them together and you have $1,200. Bid A is twice as profitable as bid B, but loss aversion makes bid B feel better because you're more likely to not lose. It gets worse with something called the endowment effect. Researchers gave people coffee mugs and then tried to buy them back. People demanded about $7 to give up the coffee mug, but wouldn't pay more than $3.50 to buy one. Once you own something, losing it hurts more than gaining it felt good. For contractors, ways this can play out is you spent 3 hours on an estimate. You've mentally pictured yourself doing the job, and you've started thinking, this could be a great project. Now, getting the job feels like losing something you already own. So, what do? You lower your price to avoid the loss? The more time you've invested in estimating, the more painful it feels to walk away without winning. So, you chase bad jobs just to avoid that feeling. The fix is before you invest any time in a detailed estimate, write down your walkaway price. I will not do this job for less than dollar mark. When you're tempted to trim your bid because you've sank 5 hours into it, look at that number. The time is already gone. Don't make it worse by winning unprofitable work. The third trap, and probably almost every contractor has fallen into this one. I know this estimate is tight, but this job will go smooth. The client seems reasonable, the weather should be good, I won't hit any potholes. Then you hit 3 change orders, 2 weeks of rain, and what you thought was a reasonable client turns into one who nickels and dimes every decision that's made. This is called the planning fallacy. We're all terrible at predicting our own projects, and there's research that backs it up. Kahneman, the guy I referenced above, asked psychology students to predict when they would finish their dissertations. The average estimate was 34 days. The actual average was 55. They were off by 64%. Then he asked, what if everything went as poorly as it possibly could? The average answer was 49 days. Even their worst case scenarios were still too optimistic. But that's just students, right? Researcher Brent Flyvberg, I probably destroyed the pronunciation of that name. He analyzed 16,000 construction projects across 136 countries. His finding was that only 8.5% of projects came in on time and on budget. The average cost overrun was 62%. 1 in 6 projects experienced cost overrun or 200% or more. These aren't student projects. These are million and billion dollar developments with expert teams, and they're still massively over budget. Why? Because so many estimators believe their project will be the exception, not the norm. Some fixes for this is use reference class forecasting. Instead of asking how long will this take, ask how long did my last 10 similar projects actually take? A simple thing you can do for your crews or yourself is a daily time audit. This isn't to make it a competition between different guys on a crew. It's meant to get a realistic number on how long it takes to do a task. Example, if someone is installing baseboard trim for 4 hours, tell them to log the time and how many linear or square footage he ran of material. If the task is split between a few guys, take the average among them for your number. Your past performance is a better predictor than your current optimism. And build in contingency. Research shows 10 to 20% contingency is standard, not excessive. If you're not adding contingency, you're not estimating, you're hoping. The fourth trap, and this one could really be killing your margins. When a client says, I got 3 other quotes and yours is the highest, what goes through your head? Probably not, did I calculate cost correctly? Is my margin appropriate for this risk? More likely, what are the other guys charging? Am I out of line? Should I lower my price? You just shifted from objective analysis and your actual cost to social comparison. What everyone else is doing. And here's the problem. Research confirms what every contractor suspects in competitive bidding. The other person who wins is often the person who underestimated the most. They call it the winner's curse. Winning the bid often meant you had the most optimistic estimate. Think about what you don't know about the other guy's bid and reverse engineer it. Did he maybe forget to include the fact that his workers' comp insurance increased in price? And did he bake it into his costs? Maybe he's not accounting for disposal. Maybe he thought it was going to be 12 days and you think it's 16. Maybe his profit isn't actually profit and it's just paying himself hourly. And maybe he's been losing money on jobs all year due to the same mental mistakes that you could be making and doesn't even realize it. You're comparing your accurate estimate to someone else's mistake and then lowering yours to match. Possible fixes are stop asking what others are charging. Start asking, what do I need to charge to make this worth my time? If you can't do it profitably, let the other guy have it. You don't need to race to the bottom to face potential bankruptcy. The last one, and this one might hit the deepest. How do you see yourself? Most contractors identify as craftsmen first and business owners second. You got into this because you're good with your hands, not because you wanted to run a business. And here's what that does to your pricing. When someone questions your price, it feels like they're questioning your worth as a person. So you cave, you lower the number, and you apologize for it. Yeah, I know it's a lot, but you've tied your self-worth to whether people say yes to your pricing. The reframe is you're not selling hours. You're not even selling craftsmanship. You're selling a result. The client doesn't care how many hours it takes. They care whether about their kitchen looks amazing and functions perfectly, and all of the memories that they're going to have in it. When you price based on the value of the result, not the cost of the inputs, you stop apologizing and start presenting. The other identity shift you have to have is you're a business owner who happens to be good at a trade, not a tradesman who accidentally ended up running a business. Business owners price for profit. Tradesmen often price for approval. Which one do you want to be? In recap of these 5 traps, the first one was anchoring. The first number you hear often controls your estimate. Set your own anchor first so it's not dragged down. Loss aversion. The fear of losing the job makes you underprice. Calculate expected profit, not win profitability. Optimism bias. You think this one will go smooth. Maybe it will, but maybe it won't. Use historical data and add contingency and build out reference points from previous jobs to really tell you the numbers. Social comparison. You're racing against competitors who might be racing towards bankruptcy. Run your own numbers and don't follow them in a death spiral. Identity. You might have to work on this. You're a business owner, not a tradesman seeking approval. Price for profit, not acceptance. These aren't character flaws, they're how the human brain works. The contractors who succeed are the ones who build systems to override these instincts. If you want to go deeper on this, the complete estimating system with calculators, formulas, and templates, I built a guide called the Estimator's Edge. The link for that is down in the description. And you can find all of the other systems I designed for helping you tighten up your business and make it more profitable. And if this video hits home for you, share it with another contractor, because a lot of guys are stuck in the same traps you are. The last thing I want to hit is watching videos is easy, implementing them is hard. And that's why I built a community around this. It's called the Build Ledger, and it's on School. There you can find all of the same resources that I mentioned above, and I'll be adding full implementation walkthroughs as time progresses. There'll be live group calls, and also if you're interested in working one-on-one with me, that's the place to do it. And most importantly, other contractors that are going through the same thing you are. Because learning from someone else's expensive mistake is a lot cheaper than making it your own. The link for that is also in the description. All right, go check your last few estimates and see which traps got you. How did you score? Tell me in the comments below, and I'll see you in the next one.